as you're getting 10,000 miles and 20,000 miles, as you're getting 10,000 miles and 20,000 miles and 50,000 miles and 100,000 miles, and and everything you have ever known. You know, I mean, like the whole history of the human race is getting to the point where you can cover it up with your thumb. And that's a very powerful psychological force.
After 3 days filled with anticipation, the Apollo 16 crew finally reached its destination. Young and Duke entered the lunar module Orion, while Mattingly stayed in the command and service module Casper.
Sergeant, go. Capcom, we're go for undocking.
Just after the lunar module detached from the command module, Mattingly tested the main engine's primary and backup steering systems before he was to fire the engine to correct the spacecraft's orbit. Mattingly found that the primary steering system worked perfectly, but when the backup system was used, the entire spacecraft unexpectedly oscillated violently. The failure of either primary or backup steering systems was cause for a mission abort. If this problem proved to be a system failure, then the crew would have to return home immediately and hope that the remaining steering system would not fail as well.
Get them back together, get the things back if they want them, get them mentally prepared to do what they're going to do.
But now, don't take that as input. I'm talking out loud. I didn't want to say something unless I'm sure of.
I don't see any way we can continue on.
Okay.
It looked like we were going to abort, and you can imagine the disappointment we had at this point to think that we were going to have to abort the mission. We'd come through 240,000 miles, and we've been training for 3 years almost, and here we are 8 miles away from our landing site. We can see it, and they're about ready to tell us to come home.
Will you confirm forward on me?
I just don't much see how we can make it on this next trip. I think you guys ought to...
Trajectory point of view. And in the midst of this, some of these simulations started to surface in the back of people.
Meanwhile, Young and Duke were sweating things out in the lunar module, not sure whether they'd have to abort the mission and redock with Mattingly in the command module, or if they would be able to.
4 or 5 hours, I figured we didn't have a prayer at landing on the moon because of that engine. We was going to have to turn around and come home as quick as we could.
It was discovered that a broken wire.
AC, 73, looking super.
You see the shadow stop, that means he's...
I don't know if you can really tell or not, but on the Earth, with all that equipment on and a backpack, we weighed 360 pounds. We trained in Earth at the block field, as you saw in that film, a lot, and you could barely move your big toe. But when you're on the moon and you only weighed 60 pounds, so the jump was delightful.
There we go.
One of their initial responsibilities was to set up the first space-based telescope, known as the ultraviolet camera and spectroscope. This allowed scientists for the first time to photograph deep space objects without the interference of the Earth's atmosphere, and prove beyond any doubts the many advantages of the moon becoming a perfect base for astronomy. Another experiment package that was to be deployed was a heat flow experiment that was to measure the movement of heat from the moon's interior to its surface. Both Young and Duke had performed the setting up of this experiment hundreds of times in simulations and had no doubts as to its ultimate success.
One of the big experiments, drilling a hole into the moon while John is working on the power station. Unfortunately, as he walked away, you'll notice his left foot, he gets his foot caught in one of the cables, and just right there he ripped it loose. Unfortunately, that was the electrical power to the experiment I was working on.
That cable.
Watch the cable.
Cable number 1.
Keep flow. Pull it off. Didn't even know it.
That was something I'd done many times in training, and they said it wasn't like that, but they fixed it for Apollo 17. In fact, on Apollo 17, when Jack tripped over the central station,